From a weight loss point of view, there is a plethora of studies that have essentially shown there is no significant benefit to either. And some of the probably the best design studies come from Professor Christopher Gardner out of Stanford. He initially ran a study in the early 2000s called the A to Z study. This featured Atkins, it featured the Zone diet, the Learn diet, and the Ornish diet. All of these have a different ratio of macronutrients. So some of them are low carb, some are high carb. And 12-month trial, by the end of that 12 months, there was no significant difference between Atkins and Ornish. Atkins is the lowest carb and Ornish is the highest carb. The idea with this was they had dietitians who would use the most prominent books, so the Atkins book and the Ornish book at the time, to educate people on how to adopt these diets. This was done, I think, in 2003. There was a very interesting finding, though, from this study. So within the low carb and within the high carb, some people did really well and some people did really poorly. So there was this sort of wide variation. Christopher Gardner was left thinking, well, I wonder what explains that. Why would some people do really well on low carb, some do really poorly, and the same for high carb? And he thought maybe it's genetics or perhaps it's insulin resistance, how well your body can utilize glucose, carbohydrates. So he went away and got funding and ran another study, a larger study, 600 people, again 12 months, called Diet Fits. And this study only had two arms. The two arms were a low carb diet and a high carb diet. He knew that what he would see in each group was some people do really well and some really poorly. And he wanted to see if perhaps these genetic markers, he was looking at 3 different genetic variations. He wanted to see if they would affect the outcome or if insulin resistance would affect the outcome. And very interestingly, none of that predicted who was successful and who was unsuccessful in weight loss. So we're left in this position today where that is largely unanswered. For some reason, some people do better on high carb and there's certain people that are doing better on low carb.